or any harm claim. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome, K-Man, to another episode of Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon, and welcome to Straight Talk. How are you doing today, Mr. Harris?
I'm okay today, Mr. Solomon. Kind of a busy day today, a little stressful from time to time, but otherwise productive. At least I like to tell myself. How was your day?
My day is pretty productive as well. Now, I am a little tired because I was up till very late last night, up in East End until after 11. Don't ask.
Don't ask?
Yeah.
No? Okay.
I'm doing all sorts of stuff, cutting steel, you name it. I was busy. But yeah, other than that, I'm perfectly fine.
Well, good news is the weekend is quickly approaching.
Almost Friday,
and hopefully that'll mean you can get caught up on your sleep. Long weekend. Let me check the calendar.
Oh, yeah, another one.
Just to be sure. But yeah,
you're right.
There is a long weekend coming up this weekend. Monday is going to be Discovery Day.
Oh.
Yeah, Monday the 19th, Discovery Day.
What did we discover again?
We discovered the Cayman Islands and found that there were people living here.
1501 or 1503?
1503.
Okay.
There you go.
Good. Let's celebrate that one.
Yes. And of course, our station here, our mother station, Bobo, is having a bit of a scavenger hunt on that day, as I heard earlier on today. So there have some events planned for the public and, of course, members of our overall listening audience. But don't worry, it doesn't involve you and me. You can definitely get caught up on some sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we going to be hunting like eggs or something? Or?
I think
God knows what you'll be hiding.
I think it's a celebration of Discovery Day, so there'll be clues placed all around the Cayman Islands with, based on a historical context. So it's kind of like a Cayman historical trivia scavenger hunt, as I understand it. Our dear friend Moneypenny elucidated me on the various activities on Monday. So
it's one of those where you sneak around and you find a little clue, and then that leads you to the next post.
Clue, and the next clue, and the next clue. Look under a coconut, underneath a specific mango tree.
Yeah.
Yeah, things of that nature. Should be fun. I mean, apparently these scavenger hunts are starting to, have a degree of regularity, and that would only suggest that, people who participate in them seem to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of agree with the historical context of it all. Why not? Learn something about the Cayman Islands whilst having some fun with your friends. I think it's a good opportunity, and certainly I want to encourage everyone who
beer in the
is
car,
not already signed up to do so. Yeah.
I won't comment.
Yeah, leave it alone for now.
Yeah.
Well, it is Thursday, the 15th day of May here on Straight Talk. We are broadcasting, as always, live on your radio dial at 103.1 FM, but simulcasting live over YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook under the search words Straight Talk Radio Show. You can also find us on the ACT Cruise Tourism Facebook page as well, at least for the moment.
You didn't get my link?
Yes, I didn't get my link either. So
Hey.
as soon as our guy is starting to slip.
We're slipping.
He is.
We're slacking here.
He is. Well, I reached out to him now, so he'll send it over to us.
Quick o'clock.
Quick o'clock in a few moments.
What's your one? Oh, dark 30? What's that one?
Oh, dark 30. You're waking up at oh, dark 30. When you wake up and it is still dark outside, but it's not quite, the legitimate early morning, like 5 a.m., 5:30 a.m., where you're getting some light, but not enough.
Mm-hmm.
So, oh, dark 30 is anytime after 3 o'clock to about 5:30, where it's still dark, the moon is up, but you're wide awake.
I know. Sometimes I wake up like 2 in the morning. I'm thinking it's 5. It's like, it's 2. It's like, come on already. What's taking so long?
Right. Oh, dark 30.
Oh, dark 30. Oh, my God. I learn something new every day.
You do. Well, there you go. There's your YouTube link for the day. Forward that around, and as soon as I get the other links, I will share it with you.
Muy agradecido por eso.
And a few other persons at the same time.
All right.
The phone lines are open for what will be another open mic segment here on the program. 745-2626 is the number. Or if talking isn't your thing, on the air anyway. You can also reach out to us on our WhatsApp number. 928-2562 is the number. From there, you can either leave us a WhatsApp audio note or a traditional WhatsApp text message. Again, multitasking away. We have, let's see, let's forward, and forward. Let's see, forward to my good friend, Ellio Solomon. Now you have all the links. So
all right, now I get to forward all of my friends.
Yes, you can forward your friends and take it from there, put them up on social media.
Of course, there's somebody listening saying, no, I'm not your friend.
My friend, why do you keep sending this to me?
Stop sending it, for God's sake.
I get it. I had enough of it.
That was happening for sure when I was on the Red Bitch Chat.
Yeah.
We're not your friends.
Not your friends anymore.
Oh, Lord. Not that cruise. No.
Well, we like to start off with some degree of good news, and whilst I'm not prepared to elucidate on the details of these, or this rather, bit of good news, apparently Cayman Islands tech pros, as well as a recent report by PricewaterhouseCoopers, suggests that the Caribbean, particularly the Cayman Islands, could become the Caribbean's Silicon Valley. Not only do we believe that the introduction of technology companies and various aspects of the tech industry could move to the Cayman Islands. Certainly, we have been talking about those opportunities specifically through the Cayman Enterprise City route. But according to a recently published PricewaterhouseCoopers report, which I have not read, they go on to suggest that AI, artificial intelligence, could prove to be a big economic boost for the Cayman Islands. Certainly, these were points during the election. You recall, I think the only candidate who was really speaking about it was Heyman Rankin. He talked about AI, but he also talked about fintech. Jordan Rivers also, forgive me, Jordan, if you're listening, you did also point us in that direction. Polls, but hopefully their colleagues in the Cayman Islands National Party clearly will remember their views, and hopefully it is a group view.
Hopefully they have a place for them.
And, yes, hopefully they have a place for them in the incoming administration. But certainly in terms of those recommendations for potential new revenue sources for the Cayman Islands, and as we say, we like innovation, we like being first. So perhaps whether it be through AI or fintech or some of the other Bitcoin-related digital currencies that are out there today, maybe the Cayman Islands may end up being innovators in those fields.
So did they give any specifics there?
Like I said, I didn't read the PricewaterhouseCoopers report. The article that appeared in the Compass, Tech Pros think Cayman could be Caribbean Silicon Valley. It goes on to suggest Cayman could become the Caribbean's high-tech hub, according to organizers of an event designed to promote computing, have said. An event that was held on the 10th of May at the Cayman Enterprise City Signal House said the event was designed to attract people new to computer skills and those who had some experience and wanted to learn more, as well as benefit from the community. I'm just seeing here, just scanning it very quickly. You always ask me these specific detailed questions when I offer up the preference. I have not read it yet. And then Ellio says, well, give me some details. But I haven't read it yet. I want some details.
You've got time. Just read a little.
Exactly.
Some snippets out here.
Charles Kirkernel, CEO of Cayman Enterprise City, suggested blah, 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 blah,
That's the intelligible part.
blah, 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 blah. But once again, the headlines don't seem to match the content of the actual story itself. Personally, I think Cayman has a huge potential and could potentially be something like Silicon Valley of the Caribbean, and I believe that with my whole heart. A software engineer said Cayman had a deep pool of computing expertise drawn from around the world, plus the population that had determination, curiosity, and an interest in building, whatever that means. What I will say is that I have had the opportunity in recent years, not yesterday, but in recent years, you'll remember our former IT manager over at that other company that we worked for many years.
Yeah, that company.
Exactly, that company, who will remain nameless. His sons, as a matter of fact, is the gentleman who was our IT manager, now works for government. And, well, we haven't spoken about sharing his name over the radio, so I won't. But his sons, clearly the apple didn't fall too far from the tree.
Right.
You will recall many of the nights that we would burn our midnight oil preparing for that other show many moons ago, oftentimes would also include the IT guy and us, and of course his sons, who at the time were very young, would oftentimes be in tow because he was a single parent, and again, he didn't want to leave them home by themselves. So apparently all of that paid off, because there's at least two of his sons who are now young men in their 20s. I happened to have the good fortune to meet with one of his sons maybe I would say 2-3 months ago. And apparently he's out there developing apps, of his own creation, and seemingly, headed down the tech or computing pathway, software and the like. So, again, it's nice to see the apple didn't fall far from the tree, but also it seems that young people more and more are, headed down that technology pathway. And I think it's encouraging. I know persons, I'm trying to remember his name. He has since passed on. Oh, my goodness. Anyway, there's that robotics school. They have a robotics camp that they're teaching robotics and, robots, and teaching how to put them together and whatnot. That's been going on for a while. The young man, the gentleman who's passed on is Thompson. It was... I'm
horrible with names, Austin.
Yeah, exactly.
But, hearing you talk about the technology stuff, I remember being involved in the IT strategy number 12 for the... was it Vision 2009 or something? I don't know what that vision was now.
Yeah.
So many visions.
It's one of those days for us, man. We know what we want to say, but we just can't,
I can't remember.
give you the details, because we won't say we're getting old, but we're just having one of those days. Just one of those days.
Blonde moments.
Blonde moments.
Senior moments.
That's right. Well, yesterday, let's talk about yesterday. Yesterday,
The Great Discovery.
The Great Discovery. At the end of our show, following a fantastic conversation with the new Speaker of the House of Parliament, the Honourable Ezra Miller, which was a fantastic conversation. Again, hopefully members of the listening audience had an opportunity to tune in for that. But immediately following that conversation, shortly before we went off air at 6:30, we shared what we considered was breaking news. And that breaking news, if you're just joining us now, related to the pre-election economic and financial update that was provided in advance of the elections, which basically said in a nutshell that the outgoing previous administration, the UPM administration, would be leaving the new administration in a bit of a financial crisis, with the country expected to be in deficit and not surplus to the tune of some $26 million. So basically, starting out the new government term, $26 million in the hole. Obviously, we weren't the only ones to believe that. Certainly, all of the runners, contestants, challengers in the last election, including the TCCP,
Used it as a beating
CIMP,
stick.
They used it as a beating stick, and quite naturally so, we did, against the previous administration to cite amongst their other failings. This was an example of poor fiscal discipline. Well, again, we believed it in April. But just yesterday, the government press release issued the latest quarterly financial report for the period ending March 31st, 2025, and it suggested just the opposite, that there is no deficit. In fact, there is a surplus. The country would have ended or started 2025, ended 2024 with $54.6 million in surplus. The unaudited financial results in the first quarter of 2025 show a $262.2 million surplus for core government and a $268.1 million surplus for the entire public sector. So clearly a complete about face. In April, the otherwise financial professionals at the finance department told us we were looking to expect a $26.2 million deficit. And as of yesterday, the government tells us that they did, in fact, expect to have a $54.6 million surplus. As you stated yesterday, kind of hard to walk that one back. Certainly the damage has already been done, largely to the previous UPM government. Not to suggest that, the outcome would have been any different. Deficit or surplus was just really the last nail in a long line of nails in the UPM's coffin. And arguably they weren't going to get back in anyway. But again, we think in fairness, it's important to point out that in this case, the bean counters clearly got it wrong. And one has to ask the question, you got it wrong, but how did you get it this wrong? And how are those calculations done? And will there be any accountability at the civil service level? This is a question for the Honorable Deputy Governor to answer, I suspect, after he's had a chance to chat with his Ministry of Finance and the Honorable Financial Secretary and the Accountant General. But that was yesterday's breaking news. I anticipated it would be somewhere in the media today, but it's not. But it is only Thursday, and there's a long weekend coming up, so maybe our good friend Mr. Whitaker and others are sharpening their pencils and intending to bring an article on the subject for tomorrow. We will give them the benefit of the doubt and, again, hope to see if it finds its way in the media on Friday. But we thought that was rather substantial news. And just remember, you heard it here first on Straight Talk.
Right here first on Straight Talk.
Indeed.
But again, as I said yesterday, that news would be astronomical, to say the least, if in fact it was published that we had a deficit just prior to the election, when in fact we did not.
Yeah.
That's an astronomical mistake, and nobody could argue that it would not have had an impact on a lot of things. I know it was used. It was one of the things thrown out, amongst other things. Oh, we can't build a pier either because, look at the state of the government affairs.
Yes.
So I'm sure that it would have been a proper beating stick, if you like, for the UPM, and no doubt would have had an impact on the elections.
Absolutely.
And again, how, as I've said before, know what the alternatives are, what the remedies are. I have no idea.
No, neither do I.
Something worthy of investigation.
Would be curious to know how the former Deputy Premier, now MP for the constituency of Georgetown Central, who seems to be the only member of the opposition who reaches out to the program, but hopefully that'll change going forward. Obviously, would love to have a fixed day for the opposition on the program, and whether it is Mr. Brian who facilitates that through, ongoing conversations with yourself or not. But certainly just on this point alone, obviously, Mr. Brian was the former Deputy Premier of the country, former Minister of Tourism of the country, and a member of the former UPM administration. So if you've got your ears on, Mr. Brian, in light of this recent press release and the details issued just yesterday by the government in the Q1 2025 financial report, which was gazetted on the 12th of May, and of course the press release published just yesterday, maybe you have a comment on how the finance department and the bean counters of government got these financial forecasts so horribly wrong.
It reminds me when we had someone on the program, again, I won't call his name, but he was a person who had ran for office. He used to be sitting here on the talk show with you/us. And I remember I was elected at the time making the argument that the Auditor General shouldn't just be able to go ahead and release these reports to the public. They should go through the proper process in terms of being tabled in the Parliament and then getting the input, etc., from PAC, blah, blah, blah. And I remember he was arguing, no, I see nothing wrong with them being released. And then it wasn't long after that something was released on him, remember?
Yes.
And here in this particular situation, I would imagine it's probably something to do with finance and economic development, perhaps in collaboration with the ESO or something. I have no idea who released this information. I don't think it's the Auditor General's office, but as I've said before, I find it a little bit incredible. I almost don't want to believe that. But if it is indeed the case, it's a huge mistake, and I don't know how you remedy something like that. And definitely, amongst other things, the Deputy Governor, the group there, of the government would clearly have to be showing the public how you're definitely going to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yes. As you say, it absolutely had an impact on the previous administration. Whether or not it was sufficient enough to perhaps change the outcome, which I don't believe it would have, but still, it is a sizable and considerable mistake.
What wouldn't have changed the outcome?
If they had reported the accurate news that there was a surplus and not a deficit. In April, the deficit only fueled the conversation of the need for better fiscal management.
But surely, if we can look up the history of this. What's the acronym again for the financial report?
Acronym
for
the
pre-election.
Oh, yes, the pre-election economic and financial update. It was. I don't remember what the
pre-election financial update, right? So okay. Again, I'm going to make a pretty good guess that the reason you did this in the first place, because it didn't happen back in the day.
Yeah.
The reason this would have come about would be precisely to have an impact on the election, to show, in other words, to show what is the state of the affairs of the government that has served you for the last 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And whether you want to put that or not, that is clearly have to be understanding that you are going to impact the decision-making of the general public in relation to the publication of that report.
Yeah.
All the more reason you're supposed to be ensuring the accuracy, the 100% accuracy of such a report.
Right.
And so in publishing it, I am confident if they had published that the UPM government had the country in a surplus position, that would have clearly shined a positive light on the government.
Yes.
And increased their chances of bringing in more members and therefore form the government.
Yeah.
So there's no argument to me that a negative report caused the government there, in this case the progressives, to lose the government.
Yes. No, you're.
I mean, what did they need? 3 more members to form the government?
Yes.
Come on.
Right.
I want to know. Hey, we got a list of names. We need to know who published this report and the persons who helped influence the report.
Right.
And at the minimum, somebody's going to have to answer as to what is going to be done to ensure it doesn't happen again.
Yes.
Because it's I don't know what word to use, what adjective, but I'll stick with astronomical for now. Astronomical size error.
Yes, indeed.
With major ramifications. I want to hear from the opposition on this. I wonder if Mr. Brian, he calls into the program regular. I think he even said he'd be coming on the program most likely next week, right?
Yes. Well, he said he would like to come on the program once we can obviously establish a regular day for the opposition, which we suggested that, if we have those conversations offline, we can perhaps, find a middle ground in which to make that happen. But again,
your memory is less senior than mine, Austin. You're shining.
In some things, my friend, in some things.
Yeah.
But it was just pointing out that whilst it was the 2025 pre-election economic update, there was a report by the Auditor General, which also came out in the first week of April, entitled "Improving Financial Accountability and Transparency, Long-Term Financial Sustainability," issued by the outgoing Auditor General, Sue Winspear. In that report, she said public sector spending had been increasing at an unsustainable level, and given the demands of an aging population and the country's growing debt burden, it might not be able to meet its commitments in the future without a long-term fiscal strategy in place.
Are you saying it was outgoing Ms. Winspear that published a report?
The report, Improving Financial Accountability and Transparency, Long-Term Financial Sustainability, was the final report issued by the Auditor General's office and the outgoing Auditor General, Sue Winspear. It was published in February 2025, and then in April 2025, just 2 months later, we had the news reports of the pre-election economic update, which suggested the country was in fact facing a $26 million deficit that would face the incoming government.
But we don't know specifically who authored that report.
Which report?
The pre-election one.
Yeah, well, no, we do know the pre-election one was authored by the government. I have it here.
And specifically what department?
It doesn't say what. Let's see. The page is intentionally left blank. Introduction. Very quickly. Blah, 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 blah.
I'm searching too.
PREFU was the acronym, by the way.
There you go, PREFU. There you go.
Yeah.
That name should concern us.
PREFU, quite right.
What a name, PREFU.
Blah, blah, blah. It doesn't, provides for
almost
the
like
chief
FAFO.
officer of the ministry responsible for finance. So the
What's that?
chief officer, the ministry responsible for finance, to publish a pre-election economic and financial
That's what I
update.
thought.
So it came in accordance to the Public Management and Finance Act 2020 revision, and it came out of the Ministry of Finance.
Ministry
so it
of
would have been
Finance.
the permanent, the financial secretary, who is I would believe, the chief officer for that ministry. It is 58 minutes past the hour of 4 o'clock, and we have to pause, check in with the BBC News. But there'll be more Straight Talk next, right here on Bobo FM.
Bobo.
BBC News.
BBC News.
World news from the BBC. Violent clashes.
Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive winds.
A search and recovery operation.
A race against time.
An imminent threat.
Flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here.
More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
The vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world.
Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest-standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
Hello, I'm Eileen McHugh with the BBC News. The United States has said it doesn't have high expectations for peace talks between Ukraine and Russia in Turkey after the two sides failed to meet on Thursday. There'll be another effort to bring the delegations together on Friday. President Zelensky has said he's ready for talks, but doesn't believe Moscow is serious about negotiations. Our Russia editor Steve Rosenberg is in Istanbul.
I think the message the Kremlin was sending is these talks are simply a continuation of the peace talks that took place and were broken off in 2022. In other words, as then, Russia may well come out with maximalist demands, such as insisting on reducing the size of the Ukrainian armed forces. I think there's a growing sense in the United States that they're not making progress, they're not edging closer to peace.
President Putin has sacked the commander of Russia's ground troops amid signs the situation on the Ukrainian front has almost reached stalemate. 70-year-old General Oleg Salyukov is now deputy head of the Security Council. The U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, says the Trump administration is troubled by the humanitarian situation in Gaza, which is reeling under an Israeli blockade. Mr. Rubio spoke as at least 114 Palestinians were reported killed in fresh Israeli airstrikes. Tom Bateman is our State Department correspondent.
This was rare language from Mr. Rubio, who usually declines to point out the impact of the war on Palestinian civilians, instead calling for Hamas to surrender and release the remaining hostages. While he did so again, he also said the U.S. administration was not immune to the suffering of the people of Gaza. Amid Israel's continuing blockade of United Nations aid into the territory, Mr. Rubio called for progress on a controversial Israeli-American proposal for private providers to set up aid collection points in Gaza, a plan rejected by the UN as unethical and unworkable.
The U.S. Supreme Court is hearing a case related to President Trump's move to end automatic citizenship for children born on American soil. The president has signed an executive order not recognizing children born in the U.S. unless at least one parent is an American citizen or lawful permanent resident. Opponents in 22 states say this violates constitutional rights. One of those is Washington State. Nicholas Brown is its Attorney General.
Birthright citizenship has been the law of the land in America for 150 years, and this action by the president went counter to all that, and I think fundamentally showed a weakness of the president, that he couldn't go through the normal channels of working with Congress or working with states to try to amend the Constitution if that was his policy goal. Instead, he tried to take an executive action that was so disregarding of our law and our foundational principles that we had to act.
This is the World News from the BBC. The Chinese electric vehicle maker BYD says it will open its first European centre in Hungary. It was announced by the company's CEO, speaking alongside the Hungarian Prime Minister in Budapest. BYD, the world's largest EV maker, has invested heavily in Hungary for years. Belgian lawmakers have overturned 2-decade-old legislation designed to phase out nuclear power. The move permits the construction of new power stations and extends the life of 2 existing nuclear plants that account for 40% of electricity production. The Energy Minister hailed the vote as a decisive step for Belgium's economic, environmental and strategic future. Police in London have charged a Ukrainian man in connection with fires at 2 properties and a car linked to the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Roman Lavrinovich, who's 21, faces 3 counts of arson with intent to endanger life. Here's Daniel Sanford.
The fires began in the early hours of VE Day, May the 8th, when a car that Sir Keir Starmer had sold to a neighbour last year was seen burning out of control. 3 days later, someone set fire to the front door of a terraced house containing a flat the Prime Minister lived in until 1997. Then on Monday, there was a similar fire at the home in North London that the Prime Minister still owns, but rents to his sister-in-law. Yesterday, Sir Keir Starmer told the House of Commons the fires were an attack on all of us, on democracy and the values that we stand for.
Scientists in Japan and the United States have deciphered the mystery behind the distinctive colouring of ginger cats. They've identified a mutation in the gene which determines skin and fur colour, resulting in lighter pigment. It's carried by the X chromosome, so for males, a single altered gene is enough to turn them orange. This explains why most ginger cats are male, while the females are patchier. BBC World News.
Opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM. We're your hosts, Ellio Solomon and myself, Austin Harris. The phone lines are open at 745-2626, or you can reach out to us on our WhatsApp number by dialing 928-2562. And from there, of course, you can either leave us a WhatsApp audio note or a traditional WhatsApp text message. We are broadcasting live on your radio dial at 103.1 FM, but also simulcasting live over YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook with the key search words Straight Talk Radio Show. You can also find us on the ACT Cruise Tourism Facebook page. Prior to the break, we were discussing what we discovered in what we called yesterday's breaking news, which so far has not found its way to the mainstream media, but basically suggesting that the pre-economic financial update that was provided in advance of the election, suggesting that the country would be in a deficit position when the next new administration was decided after the elections, turned out to be completely wrong, false, or inaccurate based on information that was published by the government just yesterday.
It's the same government.
The same government, and presumably the same Ministry of Finance, suggesting, no, there is no deficit, but in fact there was a 54 point, let me get it right, a 54, I think it's 0.2, but let me get it right again. Oh, I keep moving my notes around. Anyway, they suggested it was in fact a
millions of dollars in surplus.
Millions in dollars in surplus. Now, you asked the question, did we find this report? Did we see the date of this report? Referring, of course, to the pre-fu. And yes, the pre-fu, we have a comment here, was in fact published on the 2nd of April by the Ministry of Finance. And in the introduction, page 4 of that report, it says, in accordance to Section 26 of the Public Management and Finance Act 2020 revision, it provides for the chief officer of the ministry responsible for finance to publish in the Gazette a pre-election economic and financial update, or pre-fu, no more than 42 days, nor less than 28 days before the end of the general election. The purpose of the pre-fu is to provide updated information on the economic and financial outlook for the current financial year ending 31st December 2025 and next year. On page 6 in the Statement of Responsibility, it states that the Honorable Financial Secretary and Chief Officer with the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development and the Accountant General from the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development both signed a statement of responsibility stating that they attest that to the fullest extent possible, the information contained in this pre-fu reflects the best professional judgment of the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development applied to financial information submitted by core government ministries, portfolios, and offices. And in that report on the executive summary found on page 7, it found for the 12-month period ending 31st December 2025, core government operating deficit is forecast to be $26.2 million. This represents a negative shift of $80.9 million from the $54.7 million operating surplus originally budgeted. The components of an operating surplus or deficit can be found on page 31. So basically, the Honorable Kenneth Jefferson and Matthew Tibbetts, the Financial Secretary and Accountant General, both signed their names to this document on the 2nd of April 2025, in which indicated that the country would in fact be in a negative deficit position as the new administration took office. But just yesterday, published by the same government on the 14th of May, in what was the government's quarterly financial report for the 3-month period ending 31st of March 2025, which was published in the Cayman Gazette on Monday, the 12th of May, stated that the unaudited financial results for the first quarter show a $262.2 million surplus for core government and a $268 million surplus for the entire public sector, showing the overall entire public sector surplus at about $54.6 million. So this is just days, 2 weeks following a general election, but 4 weeks prior to that general election, give or take, we were in a deficit position. I have to believe this is the first time that I'm aware that the Ministry of Finance got these economic estimates and forecasts that horribly wrong. And the question is, number one, will they own it? Will they acknowledge a mistake was made? Will there be accountability on the mistake? What impact did that mistake and, of course, the publication of that mistake have on the outcome of the last administration? And above all, how on earth did the numbers go so horribly wrong?
Now, does the numbers that we received last, does it give any specific time frame? In other words, is that projected out to end of 2025, or it doesn't state?
Yes. I'll tell you in a minute when you go and ask these specific.
Well, you're not going to ask these questions, but while you search, I want to put everyone in the driving seat, right? And the thing of it is, I'm sure all of us have had that little car that we've taken to the garage, and some of these magic mechanics, they'll come out with some extra pieces and say, you don't need that part there.
Right. Well,
Go ahead.
Details to your question is, as I stated earlier on, in terms of the purpose and contact in the introduction, the preview is to provide updated information on the economic and financial outlook for the current financial year ending 31st December 2025 and the next year. The preview provides economic forecast on the current financial year and the next financial year, forecast financial statements for the core government and the entire public sector, a statement specifying the date in which the economic forecast and financial statements were prepared, and an explanation of how the core government financial forecast statements accord with the principles of financial management as specified in Section 14 of the Public Management and Finance Law. So we're looking at the outlook for the end of December 2025 and the subsequent year ending 31st December 2026. Those are the time periods. However, I think it did mention, where was it? The preview has the 2024 unaudited actual results as its foundation. So we're looking, the starting point was the 2024 unaudited actual results of the core government and entire public sector. And then, of course, it forecast what the projected results would be for the end of 2025 and the end of 2026. It incorporates modifications to the 2025 budget as approved by Cabinet and Finance Committee under Section 11.5 and 12 of the Public Management Finance Act 2020 revision.
Well, everyone has roles and responsibilities. So as I was saying, we've probably all experienced at some point in time going to the garage, carrying our car to, one of those magic mechanics, M&M, melts in your mouth, not in your hands, hopefully.
Right.
And they come out and they say something like, oh, don't worry about that part. You don't really need that part. That was an extra.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if they're wrong that it was an extra, maybe we shut out and pull over on the side of the road somewhere. And we can probably all agree that if the same thing happens on our airline, the extra part was missing, that the ramifications of that is a little bit more extreme. You don't pull the plane over on a cloud somewhere if you're having problems. It might result in a crash. Same thing in relation to the responsibilities of some of these roles here. I want you to picture for a moment that you managed a little company or managed a country. And that in terms of reapplying for the job, when you show up, here's the sort of press. Here's the sort of press that you're getting. And this is reading one of my not-so-favorite newspapers, if you like, the revised prediction for the public finance over the next 2 years, which shows a massive turnaround from a healthy forecast. And again, bear in mind, the general public isn't sitting there and all taking some accounting class. They're taking what the media is saying, hook, line, and sinker.
Yes.
The revised prediction for public finance over the next 2 years, which shows a massive turnaround from a healthy forecast surplus to a deficit.
Yes.
Not only leaves the next administration with problems funding existing spending obligations and its public agenda, but the potential intervention of the UK. So this is something published in CNS on the 9th of April, 2025. This is you going to the elections and reading the resume or the references or the lack thereof.
The report card.
The report card. Thank you, Mr. Harris. Excellent word. That's what I like about you. Or just one of the many things.
Every now and again I come
You got it right. Here is the report card for the guy who's applying to manage your company. That it's turned it in from a surplus to a deficit position. And its political agenda, but the potential for intervention of the UK. The pre-election finance report's grim revised forecast suggests that the next government will breach the Public Management and Finance Act at the end of this year and next. And going on to talk about the breach this year is directly related to the requirement of operating surplus as a CIG, currently on track for a core government deficit of 26.2 million. Yes, deficit, as in drawn out, loss, missing, negative, by the end of this year. But the situation will be even worse in 2026. If the new administration cannot turn things around, boy, talk about predictions, it will not only have an operating deficit of 44 million, but will also not have the minimum amount of cash in its accessible bank accounts to operate the government for 90 days. According to the report, the cash reserves will only be enough to keep the government going for less than 52 days. So again, ladies and gentlemen, I really want you, again, to take you back down on memory lane just before election, getting the report card on the UPM, which I guess was enveloped by the progressives. Who's going to want to vote for that government? Couldn't we understand why they would get less seats? I think that's probably something to do with it. Deficit position, 26.2 million. In addition to that, possibility of UK intervention. So I can only say, and I really want to remain in a position where I have lots of question marks. I don't even want to say anything definitive because I'm sure that goodly office in the government has an explanation for this. Maybe there's a date we're missing somewhere.
Well, at least one WhatsApp message we received suggests that perhaps we might be looking at different time periods.
Yes, that's what I want to hear.
Guys. Weighing in on the discussion regarding the budget and pre-fu, I think you're looking at different periods of time. The published report is actual as of March 31st, 2025. That is, of course, what was contained in the May 14th or yesterday's press release by the government, whereas the pre-fu is projected and shows a deficit expected by December 2026. No, that is incorrect. And let me read to you what I just read to my good friend Ellio Solomon.
Yeah, because I asked that same question.
Taking a look at the 2025 pre-election economic and financial update, which was, I don't know how many pages, but in excess of 76 pages long and published on the 2nd of April, it says the purpose on page 4, the second paragraph in the introduction, it reads, and I quote, "The purpose of the pre-fu is to provide updated information on the economic and financial outlook for the current financial year ending 31st December 2025 and the next year ending 31st December 2026, inclusive of forecast financial statements for core government and the entire public sector."
Well, let me say again, reading the same newspaper.
And even if it was forecast for 2025, because it goes on to mention that we were at $26.2 million forecast for 2025 and a further $44 million deficit forecast for 2026. That was on April 2nd. So, okay, fine, we're forecasting a significant about turn. But now 2 weeks after the election, the actual results suggest, in fact, a $54.6 million surplus. Listen, I understand forecast and actual, but you don't get it that wrong.
Yeah.
You just don't.
That's a spread of what, like 70-something?
That's
70-something million or
easy.
whatever? Okay.
Easy.
So I was reading that same thing in this newspaper here as well. Again, talking about the 44 million and 52 days. And here on the following day, the 10th of April, same newspaper is reporting. So obviously the Governor Gene Owing took it hook, line, and sinker as well, saying the results presented in the pre-election economic and financial update for this year and the next are projections only. And at this stage, the UK government will not intervene in local public finances, responding to CNS requests for comment on the newly forecast deficits. Greg Gibson, who heads the governor's office, said that if there is a breach, the Cayman Islands government will need to present a plan to remedy it within 3 years. The current projections for this year represents a negative turnaround for a public purse of a whopping 80 million. However, the only pending breach of the Public Management and Finance Act is the core government's deficit of 26.2 million by the year end. which the new administration will need to turn into a surplus before it publishes the strategic policy statement in July. So, again, you know, I just want to say, I'd like to believe.
The person came back. That's it exactly. Projections. Listen, projections, forecast, all the same, but this is the Ministry of Finance using, first of all, the actual 2024 financial reports, and then forecasting for the next 12-month period and the next 24-month period. Yes, there is a margin of error between projections and actuals, but you do not get it this wrong.
Way outside the bell curve.
I know the desire is to defend the civil service or whatever in this case, but in this case, as one writer said, the pre-foo is a foo-foo. Yeah. It isn't worth, the paper it's written on.
Well, all again, like I said, I would love to be able to speak to those good gentlemen in there, because the fact of the matter is, projections or otherwise, when you've got something like that running around in the media, it has an impact.
It certainly did.
It has an impact on the minds of the persons who have to now go ahead and choose who's going to be running the country. And clearly it had an impact.
Here we go. We're going to hear some more about projections. Hello. Caller, you're on the air.
Hello. You gentlemen, the kings of analysis, you need to look at those figures very, very closely, because it's not necessarily that they got it that wrong. What you need to look at is, what are these massive expenditures that they're expected to have that's going to take us into the deficit. I would think that they're factoring in things like the Cayman Back School and all that, all of those capital projects that were expected to happen cost a lot of money and push us into a deficit. Are you sure that's not what's happening? Because I kind of know Matthew Tibbetts. I can't say too much for the other fella there, but Matthew Tibbetts, no figures, man. I don't believe he would mess up like that. You look deeper and see when the deficit is expected. What are the major expenditures, other than, the obvious ones, the civil service, paying their salaries and all those things. But I would think that it was all of the extravagant spending that started there towards, like in the last quarter and projected to go right through to probably the end of next year. So anyway, I'm going to leave you, because I know you're a lot smarter, you know a lot more than I do. But I don't think it's just a matter that you see a figure of 226,000 in surplus. No, and then they said it's going to be in deficit. I think you need to examine what it is that caused that little pendulum to move like that. Not pendulum, what's the thing on the clock? The hand that moves around, the gauge. I don't think they could have missed it like that. I think we're missing something.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we assume we're missing something and look?
Well, caller, other than being kings of the analysis, if you listen to me, that's precisely what I said. I would love to hear from the good gentleman, because to me, there has to be something we're missing. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Did you hear that anywhere in the discussion?
Ellio, I heard a little bit of it,
okay,
but
great.
What you got to remember, Mr. Defensive Ellio, is that we're not totally 100% tuned in only to you. There could have been a little interruption somewhere that caused me to miss a little piece.
You wouldn't happen to be defending yourself now, would you?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
Not at all.
Not at all. There you go.
Not at all, Ellio. You know better than that.
Of course.
Of course.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to call my little friend Matt and ask him now if he really got
Matthew is my friend too, and so is Mr. Jefferson.
Well, you call Mr. Jefferson while I call Matthew, and see if we can get to the bottom of this. Because, boy, I would really love to. I'm not saying one way or the other, I'm not saying that it really goes one way or the other. I have no idea, because unlike you, I don't even have the document in front of me.
You do now. I just sent it to you via WhatsApp, so you can check the link and you can read the same thing we're reading, Lorna.
Okay, all right.
You can take a look at it yourself.
Thank
all right?
you so much.
Yeah. You're very welcome.
You.
You're very, very welcome. You're very welcome. Thank you for your call and taking the time. All right. Again, I mean, I hear the point the caller is making. I understand the overwhelming confidence in the financial secretary and the accountant general. Listen, I have that same confidence, but I'm staring at two documents. One is yesterday's press release, and the other is the 76-page pre-fu, which was published on the 2nd of April, and they are saying very distinctly two very different things.
Mr. Harris, let me just say again, as I've said before several times, I'll say it again. I find the information to be incredible, right? As in unbelievable.
Yes.
Right? And I want to believe that it has to be something that's missing.
Yes.
What I can tell you is the publication that would have come out in the media would have had its effect, regardless of what is accurate or inaccurate.
Yes.
It definitely would have had an effect. But I, too, would like to believe that there's some error somewhere.
Yes.
And we will reach out. We will reach out to Mr. Jefferson. We will reach out to Mr. Matthew Tibbetts and see if we can get an explanation from them.
Yes.
Because as it appears today, it does not appear to jive very well.
No, not at all. Not at all. And again, looking from the pre-fu, it says the 12-month period ending 30th December 2025 for core government is forecast at 26.2 million. The 12-month period ending.
More Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio coming up. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Bobo 103.1.
Stingray Media encourages you to keep safe on our roads. Road safety is a shared responsibility. Pedestrians should use sidewalks where provided or walk facing the flow of traffic. Use pedestrian crossings where you have the right of way to safely cross. Pedestrians should wait until it is safe before stepping out. Drivers and cyclists should stop to allow pedestrians to cross. Supported by ICWI, Cayman Islands Insurance Association, CG Britke, and National Road Safety, the road to zero.
Visit Healthcare Pharmacy's second location in Governor Square, servicing West Bay and the 7 Mile Beach Corridor with a care and professionalism you have come to expect from Healthcare Pharmacy. Healthcare Pharmacy in Governor Square also stocks a huge selection of Hallmark and shoebox greeting cards, vitamins, sunblock, last minute, and everyday needs. To refill and transfer your prescriptions, simply WhatsApp 329-7313 or visit healthcarepharmacy.ky or drop by Monday to Saturday from 9 till 6.
Hello, pet parents. We're Cayman Vets, Cayman's most advanced veterinary clinic providing quality care and services. We are committed to being your pet's advocate and friend, offering a lifetime of care. From vaccinations and wellness checks to more advanced surgical procedures, complicated medical concerns, and emergency care on demand. For more information about us or to get in touch, please visit caymanvets.com. Cayman Vets, where compassion meets excellence.
Have your engine driving like never before with Pure 93, the highest pure octane fuel in Cayman and available exclusively at Rubis service stations. Pure 93 protects against engine knock, restores lost power and acceleration, cleans fuel injectors, intake valves, removes engine deposits, improves your fuel economy, and it meets international specification requirements for your car. Fill up with Pure 93 now and keep your engine running like new. Fuel the difference with Pure 93, available exclusively at Rubis.
At Price Right, spending less on everyday products is easy.
Spend less on office supplies, tools, and automotive products.
Spend less on groceries, fresh produce, and meat.
Spend less on electronics, TVs, and speakers.
Spend less on home furnishings, beauty products, and apparel.
At Price Right, we believe you can live better for less.
To start saving, visit us at the Airport Center in Georgetown or at Republic's Plaza in West Bay.
For more info, visit priceright.ky. Live better for less at Price Right.
It's trivia every Wednesday from 7 o'clock at Sandbar on the Georgetown waterfront. Your chance to win some fantastic prizes in our free-to-enter Trivia Madness. Great offers on beer buckets, margaritas, and a delicious menu served throughout the evening. Grab your pals and get along to Sandbar every Wednesday from 7 o'clock for the most fun you can have with your clothes on. Are we ready?
Yes, Marty!
Then let's do this. Trivia, Sandbar, 7 o'clock, Wednesday. See you there.
Across Cayman on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority, committed to caring for you. The views views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM with your host, Ellio Solomon, myself, Austin Harris. As we continue our conversation, the phone lines are open at 745-2626, or you can reach out to us via our WhatsApp number by dialing 928-2562. And from there, you can either leave us a WhatsApp audio note or share a traditional WhatsApp text message. Also, if you are email inclined, you can reach out to us via email by writing to host@straighttalk.ky and share your thoughts that way. For the better part of an hour, we have been discussing what to us seems like breaking news and has not yet found its way in the mainstream press. But hopefully somebody will write about it tomorrow as we head into a long weekend. But we are noting the rather significant differences in the math that was presented to the people of this country vis-a-vis the media on the 2nd of April, 2025, just a few weeks ahead of the general election, in the pre-election economic update, which is required as part of law under the Public Management and Finance Act 2020 revision, which suggested that the country would be in a deficit, negative, minus, red position in the end of 2025 and to the tune of $26.2 million, and a further $44 million deficit forecast projected, expected for 2026. But just yesterday, the Kemanal's government, the same government, published from the Gazette that and let me get it right, the quarterly financial report for the 3-month period ending 31st of March showed, in fact, just the opposite, a surplus of $54.6 million, or 26% greater than the projected year-to-date operating surpluses. So somewhere along the lines, the folks in the Ministry of Finance who, like the caller just before the break, we too hope we're reading something wrong. But again, my eyes don't lie. I think I have a pretty good handle in terms of interpretation of what I'm reading. I have shared copies of what I'm reading and where I'm reading it from even the most outspoken of objectors, so she could see for herself, and maybe she too will come to the same conclusion I have, Ellio has, but largely what the media came to the conclusion of as of the first week of April. And who knows, if they will see what was published just yesterday, then maybe the country will also take the same view. Looking at one of our WhatsApp messages from members of the audience, it seems as if not even any of the old 19 parliamentarians knew what was happening with the national budget. No one admitted to the deficit, and no one said anything about this new surplus. None of them wanted to claim the deficit. Let's see who will claim having a surplus. Well, again, as we say again, the only outspoken member of the previous UPM administration who, has made no compunction at calling this program and certainly appearing on this program is the former deputy premier. If he has his ears on and maybe he's heard the length and breadth of this discussion, who knows, maybe he even read the press release that came out yesterday. What are his thoughts? But our thoughts are, simply put, in the period between April and May the 14th, our financial bean counters, those persons that we hold in very high regard, made an astronomical error in forecasted figures. And it just seems incredulous. But again, figures don't lie, and I'm reading it in black and white. Don't take my word for it. Look it up yourselves.
I'm back. So, yeah, I mean, like I said before, it sounds incredible. But
it was foo-foo.
It is a matter that I have reached out to Mr. Jefferson and hope to get an email and stuff from him to clarify the issue.
That would be nice.
All I can definitely tell you is it definitely had an impact on the general public. The truth, veracity, whatever it is. Indeed. That's the situation.
Indeed.
What's the other topic, Mr. Harris?
Well, we were asking questions, I think it was this week, if not the latter part of last week when we asked the question, where is the update from the police as it relates to the regrettable incident that occurred on the 3rd of April where a member of the Caymanian public who was identified as Judy Ann Miles was in fact found to be deceased in a burning vehicle. Well, in today's headlines, following a press conference that was hosted by the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service yesterday, also the 14th of May, police investigating the death of Judy Ann Miles have confirmed on Wednesday, yesterday, that forensic evidence indicates that the car in which she died in was deliberately set alight, but stopped short of defining the case as a murder investigation. Miles, 47, the former head of the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority's anti-money laundering unit, was found dead inside a burning car on the afternoon of April 3rd in an empty lot in the Lookout Gardens of Bodden Town. Inspector Diane Dyer-Alexander, speaking at the press briefing on crime statistics on Wednesday, said the case had not been officially classified as murder because police are still awaiting forensic results. She says, and I quote, "A formal classification of the investigation will be determined once we have the forensic findings, including the outstanding toxicology and trauma assessment that are ongoing. Police have also engaged the public for any information they may have on a white sedan with a black hood seen in the area at around about the same time. But so far, they can only state that she was, in fact, she died as a result of the fire, or indicates the car in which she died in was deliberately set on fire. So it wasn't an accident, suggesting that some evidence indicated that it was arson. Whether she died before it was set on fire or after, we don't know. And whether it was murder or not, they simply can't tell because we're still waiting on the forensic results. But just yesterday, the police did acknowledge that she died in a car that was deliberately set on fire.
Well, I mean, I'm always a little uncomfortable about discussing those things. I heard all sorts of stuff, but then again, you're talking about someone that's lost their life and stuff. I walk on eggshells with that one, Mr. Harris. But have we heard anything about this young man that was sat upon by the...
No. Interestingly enough...
The hostile guy there.
No. Again, also yesterday. Yesterday was sort of a press conference on both the crime stats and the traffic stats.
Mm-hmm.
And, the next story, next to, of course, the potential mystery death, relates to the statistics and stats that were shared. But to your question, there doesn't seem to have been any comment from the commissioner of police, or perhaps he just wasn't asked by the press who were in attendance what the outcome of the situation of what quote-unquote road rage involving at least one Caymanian and another foreign national, Cayman status holder, whatever the case may be, where the young Caymanian was in fact arrested and charged, but the Cayman status holder, who, in our opinion, from the video that we saw with our own two eyes, showed him largely as the aggravator, agitator of the whole activity, getting out of his car and opening the vehicle of another car before getting his rump handed to him, saying, you can get in my car, you're going to get hurt, and that's what you got. But the young Caymanian guy, what looked like us as defending himself, was the one that got charged. And the police, obviously telling the public, listen, I hear what you're saying, but, this is the letter of the law and this is what we have to do. So, again, all I can do is shake my head, my friend.
I wonder if there's, I don't know what is the process in relation to trying to get information from the police? Write them and hope they answer?
Right, pretty much.
Yeah.
Write them, send them an email, give them a call, and take it from there. Speaking of the police, and again, the press conference that was held yesterday, also coming from the headlines, it says Royal Cameron Police Service lower resources led to a drop in traffic summonses. Just share some excerpts, and we can talk about them. Police issued 3,139 fewer traffic summons last year than they did in 2023. That decrease, obviously referring to 2024 compared to 2023, that decrease, however, was driven by, get this, a lack of resources in the Royal Cayman Police Service traffic unit rather than better driving or improved road conditions for the year of 2024. Commissioner of Police Kurt Walton, speaking at a press briefing on the annual crime and traffic statistics on Wednesday, noted that they had to pull officers from the traffic division and several other units of the Royal Cayman Police Service to help investigate the mass shooting that occurred at the Ed Bush Stadium last year. 7 people were injured in that shooting, which led to the reassignment of officers from across the Royal Cayman Police Service to concentrate on gang and firearm-related crime. In total, the RCIPS prosecuted 7,735 traffic offenses last year. As shocking as that number may be, this represents a 29% decrease compared to the year before it. This included 3,215 speeding tickets, which also represented a decline of 31% on 2023, 281 DUIs, which was in line with the same period in 2023. Walton said, and key statistics here, that there are 65,000 vehicles registered in the Cayman Islands. That is 65,000 vehicles that are traversing just shy of 500 miles of roads in the Cayman Islands. Hard to imagine. Over 7,000 traffic offenses, but this is the part that gets me.
Yeah.
They claim that, the numbers are lower. They probably could have been higher. And the reason that they're not higher is because of lack of resources, saying that they had to rob from the traffic division to help with, other serious crime. Now, I'm not going to hold this against Commissioner Kurt Walton, but you and I both recall a previous commissioner in which Mr. Walton served under as deputy police commissioner had stated to you and I on the same program that we hosted many moons ago that every police officer is, in fact, a traffic officer, were the words coming from a former police commissioner. So theoretically, what are we robbing from? Are you suggesting that there were other officers somehow couldn't have done the job? Anyway, I just noted that as an aside. He went on to point out that the rise in traffic collisions last year were 3,253, up by 1%. Walton described the driving culture as abject, adding, quote, "It's just horrific, the disregard for other road users." In 2024, 14 people were killed in 11 collisions on the island's roads. He goes on to point out another challenge is changes to road layouts, which are making it difficult for police to place their vehicles for roadside speed traps. Again, you can't make this stuff up. The commissioner noted that the police had received complaints from members of the public that, quote unquote, our own cars are parked on the road shoulder where you'd have pedestrians and cyclists. He said the police are working with the National Roads Authority to address this issue. So first of all, we're saying that you can't host a speed trap on some of Cayman's deadliest roads because of the NRA roadworks, number one. Number two, when you do try, posting cars on the shoulder of the roads, you get complaints from pedestrians and cyclists saying, "Oh, excuse me, you're in my way and you should move." Mm-hmm. Now, forgetting the fact that they're there on the side of the road, presumably to prevent speeding and presumably to prevent road fatalities. but somehow pedestrians and cyclists can't tell the police where they can be positioned and when. Again, you can't make this stuff up. He goes on to point out it's difficult to have a police officer on every stretch of our roads. And that much I'll agree with. 500 miles of drivable miles roads in the Cayman Islands. But we're not talking about having a police car on every stretch of road. We're talking about having police cars on the stretch of roads which have lent themselves to the most fatalities. Linford Pearson Highway, Shamrock Spot Strait, and at least 2, I think, on the Esterly Tibbetts bypass, which represent what? Straight, new roads, new paved, where, of course, these fatalities have occurred. But in these 3 locations, which for the reasons already identified, they're challenged. Again, lack of resources, can't park on the side for speed trap, and heaven forbid they run a riot of pedestrians and cyclists complaining they cannot park on the shoulder is the reason why they have not been present.
I said a few days ago that
can't make this stuff up.
I kind of nodded my head because I said, in many instances, I don't know what they can do. I kind of mentioned that a few days ago because there are some serious challenges. First of all, you said that there were 60,000+ cars. How many cars was it again on the roads in Cayman Islands?
65,000.
65. So I just looked up. As of the 2021 census, the Cayman Islands had a population of 71,432 persons. Of this, approximately 57,360 individuals, or 83.4%, were aged 15 years or older. So again, they don't have the specifics on 18, but while the census does not specify the number of individuals aged 18 and over, the figure of 57,360 provides a close estimate of the adult population. So you can see that clearly the number of cars outnumber the number of adults who are driving them. So we definitely know we got more than 1 car per person. The situation with the police, Mr. Harris, I think that there is some level of validity to this because if I look at Linford Pearson Highway, for example, I've always questioned, right, why is there not even a turnaround lane? So if I'm actually, let's just say, coming into town going 100 miles an hour, which I've never seen that happen.
Never.
I've never seen that happen. Never. But if you were, then if the police happen to be heading east, while I'm heading west, he's got to make it to the roundabout before he or she has a chance to even try to pursue.
Yeah.
And I have seen police officers right there on what I consider to be the Alamo Drive, right in front of downtown Reach, I think it's referred to. And, oftentimes trying to catch people speeding. I don't know. It's challenging. All I can say is we seriously have some road problems. Again, I was just driving out east 1 or 2 days ago. I saw 2 more cars on the side of the road up in Savannah running into a fence. And it's like every day that's an occurrence. I just came on a roundabout coming into work. There was one by Midtown Plaza, Jeep and a little car. I don't know. It's crazy and came on the roads. Something has to be done about the accidents. And like I said a couple of days ago when I mentioned it, I have to just shake my head. I really can't say I know what the answer is.
Again, with the greatest of respect to you and our Honorable Royal Cayman Islands Police Service, I certainly take on board the fact that perhaps policing Cayman roadways may be challenging, but it's not impossible.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about, again, you're not asking to be, posted on every stretch of road, but when you consider, 14 people killed in 11 collisions, and if you take a look at where those collisions took place, on what roadways the collisions took place. Certainly after the first, maybe the second death of 2024, maybe there might have been some proactive policing specifically on these roads, which, again, the common denominator on these roads, the Linford Pearson, the Shamrock Road, and the Esterly Tibbetts Highway, they're all straight roads. They're all very well-paved roads. They are multi-lane roads with some shoulders and could have been proactively policed, even if, so you can't hide, but you don't need to hide. Post up on the side of the road with your, tip lights on, and people will slow down. The very presence of a police officer in the same lane as you are when you're driving forces drivers to automatically slow down, make sure they got their seatbelts on, make sure they're not on the cell phone, at least in their hand. All these things which could have proactively stopped or reduced these road fatalities. But the police never run out of excuses. And then this is an instant where, again, you can't make this stuff up. Now, I take your point. I certainly agree with you. And we, go back to when our good friend Art McLean was, redesigning the road just past Lions Center. And they threw in that concrete lane in the middle of the road with no exits. Yes, that was the beginning of the end, or challenges for the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service, is that there were no emergency exits for police specifically, but certainly merchants. I can think of Maidac House, for example, complaining that, coming from the eastern districts heading into town, persons could not make a right-hand turn when crossing, say, the Baptist Church onto Maidac, because we had simply concreted the medium and made no opportunity for exits or emergency, entrances or exits. Likewise, I hear the point that, the same exists on the road constructions that we have on Linford Pearson and on the Esterly Tibbets, for that matter. And yes, I can also see that, okay, if you are detecting or trying to chase a motorbike doing 190 miles an hour, that, by the time you see it coming in the opposite direction, you have a time to turn around, you might not catch it. But a speeding car, there is at least a chance, but you talk to drivers across this island, and there just simply is no police presence on the key times you'd expect to find police presence. And again, there's just no reason for it. So,
I think you and I are both scratching our heads as to how exactly you flip a car on 5 o'clock traffic in the first place. I don't know.
Yeah. So,
but there are a lot of different things. And, I've been trying to look at, some of these issues. For example, say littering. A person from the outside perspective would say, as I did, why isn't the Royal Cayman Islands doing something about this? I remember calling the police and saying, hey, this guy just threw his trash. Now, the little bit of research I was able to do, it seems, for example, that just to give you an example of some of the challenges that are behind the scenes that you may not be aware of, is that according to the fines, it is supposed to be the Department of Environmental Health that's supposed to do that. So
because they do such a great job of picking up the trash, so they can certainly now chase down.
You really have to ask yourself, okay, hold on. Is there an enforcement arm of DET? Is there an enforcement arm of DEH that I'm unaware about that's kind of walking around to give these fines?
Mediocrity is killing this country, my friend. I'm sorry, I got to say it.
You can see that somebody has to make some revisions to the legislation, because to me, again, it should be handed over to the police, be made a ticketable offense, where a police officer can just come along and say, hey, we saw you throw the trash, or you admitted to it, here's your fine.
And as you pointed out, the reason they're not doing it is because they don't like the paperwork.
Well, that's another argument, yes.
Being a police officer is a difficult job. Nobody is saying it's easy. Yes, it is challenging, but it is, I just look at these crime stats, and all I hear are excuses as to why we couldn't have been, shoulda, woulda, coulda, and none of it adds up. But again, mediocrity is killing this country. Let's go to a comment coming from WhatsApp.
Yeah, evening, gentlemen. Yeah, all I guess about that is them people like that don't make no mistakes. Them accountants and financial secretaries and stuff, they don't make no mistakes. So in no mistake, although the reports were right. They don't make no mistake, although the reports were right. But there's another report out there that we're not seeing. So that's the missing piece of the puzzle. But although the reports were right, then people don't make mistakes. They do not make mistakes. Trust me, they do not make mistakes. So although them reports is right, but there's still another report missing that we not get to yet.
There's another report.
Yeah, I hope that is the case. And like I said, I have, as my colleague does, as the previous caller, not this one, the one before, I have the highest regard for the Honorable Financial Secretary and the Accountant General. But we got two reports, both coming from the same government, literally weeks apart, one suggesting that the country would start the new financial year, or 2025, end 2025 in deficit, And now we're showing that we are going to be, in fact, in surplus. So, you know, I suppose, well, no, I can't even say that, because, you know, the PREFU went on to suggest that the government, the outgoing UPM government, would leave the new incoming government, was the quotation given, at least in the media, with a $26 million deficit. Now, I was going to make the excuse for, you know, the accountants, was that the PREFU estimated that the end of December 2025 and the end of December 2026, the report that came out yesterday shows the financial reporting as of the end of March 2025.
Yep.
So we're not at the end of the year yet. I suppose that could be potentially the difference here in the argument why nobody is necessarily stressed out about it. But again, that would mean the media got the interpretation of the PREFU entirely wrong, and that included the Auditor General and Her Excellency the Governor.
And I think that's where the challenge is, and that's why I asked the question, you know, in terms of the dating on mentioned in one report
come back
versus
to that.
the other.
10 seconds. We'll be back after the news right here for more Straight Talk on Bobo FM.
Bobo.
The BBC is the world's most trusted news source.
And Bobo 103.1 is where you'll find the BBC World Service.
BBC News, the world news from the BBC.
And the home of Cayman's most listened to top shows.
That's right, folks. Everyone is telling their mama about the cold hard truth.
And welcome to Straight Talk. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon.
Across Cayman,
on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1.
Welcome to our newsroom here in central London. We place ourselves here at a little desk right in the thick of things.
OS from the BBC.
We can catch the very latest news from our colleagues, not just in this enormous room, but also from our colleagues around the world.
I'm in the room where they're treating children.
This is a combat zone.
The situation after the typhoon is very complicated.
It was a very tense situation.
OS from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
BBC News. BBC News. World news from the BBC. Violent clashes. Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive winds.
A search and recovery operation.
A race against time.
An imminent threat. Flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
BBC News, hello, I'm Eileen McHugh. The United States has played down expectations for peace talks between Ukraine and Russia and Turkey after the two sides failed to meet as scheduled on Thursday. There'll be another effort to bring the delegations together on Friday. The US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, said only a meeting between President Trump and Vladimir Putin would break the stalemate.
We don't have high expectations, and frankly, at this point, I think it's abundantly clear that the only way we're going to have a breakthrough here is between President Trump and President Putin. It's going to require that level of engagement to have a breakthrough in this matter. I don't think anything productive is actually going to happen from this point forward until they engage in a very frank and direct conversation, which I know President Trump is willing to do.
The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said President Putin is not serious about negotiations. Mr. Zelensky accused Russia of disrespecting Turkey and the US by sending a low-level delegation to Istanbul. Mr. Rubio has also been speaking about the Trump administration's reaction to the suffering of the people of Gaza. He blamed Hamas for the fate of the people there. Tom Bateman reports.
Marco Rubio repeated the Trump administration's stance that Hamas was to blame for the suffering in Gaza. But having been asked by the BBC about the scale of Israel's military attacks and its strikes on hospitals, he added the US was troubled by the humanitarian situation. This was rare language from Mr. Rubio, who usually declines to point out the impact of the war on Palestinian civilians, instead calling for Hamas to surrender and release the remaining hostages. While he did so again, he also said the US administration was not immune to the suffering of the people of Gaza.
The US Supreme Court is hearing a case related to President Trump's move to end automatic citizenship for US-born children. The president has signed an executive order directing federal agencies not to recognize the citizenship of children born in the US unless at least one parent is an American citizen or lawful permanent resident. Opponents of the administration say the move violates constitutional rights. The Chinese electric vehicle maker BYD says it'll open its first European centre in Hungary. The announcement was made by the company's CEO, Wang Chuanfu, standing alongside the Hungarian Prime Minister in Budapest. Here's Jae Sang-lee.
Wang Chuanfu said the centre would serve as a European hub for testing and developing Europe's versions of its car models. Hungary is the top destination for Chinese investment in Europe, and in line with this trend, BYD, which eclipsed Tesla to become the world's largest EV maker last year, has been expanding its footprint on the continent. In 2016, it built its first European assembly plant in Hungary. Later this year, it will open Europe's first ever EV production plant there.
This is the latest world news from the BBC. Belgian lawmakers have overturned two-decade-old legislation designed to phase out nuclear power. The move permits the construction of new power stations and extends the life of two existing nuclear plants that account for 40% of electricity production. The Energy Minister hailed the vote as a decisive step for Belgium's economic, environmental and strategic future. Sweden and the Netherlands are also reviving nuclear power following the energy crisis sparked by Russia's war on Ukraine. Guyana says armed men in civilian clothes have launched 3 attacks on its troops in the disputed oil-rich Essequibo region, where Venezuela plans to hold elections next week. There are no reports of injuries. Venezuela has long claimed Essequibo, which makes up 2/3 of Guyana's territory. Tensions have risen since Guyana auctioned off oil blocks 2 years ago, after which Venezuela threatened to annex Essequibo. A Brazilian court has ordered the dismissal of the head of the National Football Confederation, Ednaldo Rodrigues, and his board of directors. The case relates to an alleged forged signature in an agreement that helped them get appointed. Mr. Rodrigues was previously removed from his post 2 years ago, but the government ordered his reinstatement, citing fears that FIFA might ban Brazil's national team from competitions. Scientists in Japan and the US have uncovered the DNA that gives ginger cats their notable colour. They say it could also shed light on feline health conditions and temperament. Here's Esme Stallard.
The scientists found that in ginger cats, a gene responsible for determining skin and fur colour is missing a section of DNA code. This mutation seems to make the gene more active, giving them their unusual hue. It is carried in the X chromosome, so for males which carry one X chromosome, a single altered gene is enough to turn them ginger. This explains why most orange tabbies are male.
That's the latest from BBC News.
Opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM, broadcasting live on your radio dial and simulcasting live over YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook with the search word Straight Talk Radio Show. The phone lines remain open at 745-2626 at 7 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock, giving us just over 22 minutes before we have to wrap it up for another day. With your permission, Ellio, just let me round off the previous discussion as it relates to the crime statistics. Whilst the traffic offenses seem to be a reduction from 2023, but again, the police suggest that that comes about not because of improved driving, but perhaps of a lack of resources to police the true number. They did go on to suggest or to state that overall crime increased by 7% in 2024. Sexual offenses were up by 21%. Serious violent crime was up 68%. However, violent crime in general decreased by 3%. Firearm offenses and gun-related crime also fell by 20%. Other useful statistics, close to half of all crimes in 2024 were solved, and another 20% remain under active investigation. The overall detection rate for last year stood at 43%, which, according to Detective Superintendent Peter Lansdowne, that this rate is considered one of the best in the world. So I suppose we could, satisfy ourselves and not call it mediocrity when we consider that, as frightening as these statistics may be and as regrettable as how they could have perhaps have been proactively avoided, we will satisfy ourselves that because of a lack of resources, this is why we are where we are. But in comparison to the rest of the world, we're still number one. We're still the best in the world.
Well, the thing is I've always said, arguably, no justice in comparison, because, and I'll add to that, I've also mentioned that you need to have people in the country that are sensitive to the Cayman situation, because, yes, I recall looking up a few weeks ago, let's just say Trinidad, I think the number of murders, confirmed murders, was 600 and something in 1 year. Well, again, this is not to knock anyone, but if you could see that if a Trinidadian came to Cayman, living here, and heard that 100 people were murdered this year, they wouldn't necessarily be that alarmed by it, right? They would be arguably desensitized to it to a certain extent, if you like, because their country is 600 and something. They're just used to it. And that, unfortunately, is a situation that you see all the time, because I remember having discussions where, there's somebody outside of my door trying to run a mechanic shop, and you're saying, what are you doing? And you can ask your helper or somebody, what do you think about that? Well, I don't see anything wrong with it. Yeah, you don't see anything wrong with it because that's fine in your country.
Yeah.
But in my country, you shouldn't do that. And so there needs to be that level of sensitivity, and regardless of whether it's one person is too much, and I simply won't satisfy that we're still better than everywhere else. We need to try to make sure and keep that sensitivity alive, where we actually want to live in a society where there's no one being murdered.
Quite right.
Makes sense to me.
Best in the world. I guess they can tell that to the 14 families of people who lost their lives on the roads.
Yeah.
Saying, well, your son or daughter,
but there is a
the
change.
The world.
There is a change so much in the Cayman culture. I guess what's happening here in the country. I mean, even when we talk about traffic, I have this constant discussion where it's a matter of saying, why is this guy, on one hand, why do you have this person that's trying to be so aggressive to push themselves into the traffic and trying to mash up your car in the process? And on the other hand, it's like, is it really a problem to let this other guy in? We're going to get to work. We're all going to get to work, I assure you. But there just seems to be this change in attitude with many different things. And I talked about even being on some of these social media groups. There just seems to be this high level of intolerance that I don't want to permit your view, etc. And I don't know, it's just very unfortunate, and it's not the Cayman that I grew up in. It's very unfortunate, to say the least.
Indeed. 745-2626 is the number, or you can reach out to us on our WhatsApp line, 928-2562. With, give or take, the 18 minutes we have remaining, just wanted to follow up a little bit on our discussion that we had yesterday with the Speaker of the House, specifically relating to the amendments that were made to the 2022 at last revision parliamentary standing orders. Certainly this was an exercise conducted by the former Speaker of the House, the Honorable Sir Alden McLaughlin. And one second. excuse me, apology. The standing orders were, in fact, amended on the 26th of February and gazetted, rather, on the 26th of February, 2025. Previously, the 2022 standing orders had 91 standing orders. Amendments to the 2025 standing orders now consist of 112 standing orders. Some notable changes, as was alluded to yesterday
by the speaker,
is that there are now specific days of the week in which meetings of the Parliament will take place. They will be specifically Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. The times of those meetings will also change from a anticipated commencement of 10 o'clock, which, as we have pointed out many times, was a struggle for to account and set the new times in the standing orders from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m., so they don't have to worry about the morning rush or beating morning traffic. Hopefully by Mr. Miller as speaker, I have no doubt.
It might be late, Austin, because we'll be coming from lunch.
Right. Quite right.
You forget the lunch.
I do forget the lunch. Also, there were, I think, fixed dates or fixed months where it was determined there would be no meetings of Parliament. And according to the standing orders, the fixed recess, and I want to quote it so as not to be misquoted, standing order 15 says, notwithstanding standing order 12 that relates to meetings and sittings, and subject to standing order 14, which outlined the hours of the sitting, which we just told you about, unless there are urgent or extraordinary reasons for so doing, no meeting of the House shall be held from the first week of the month in July to the first week of the month in September of any year, obviously accounting for the summer holidays for when schools are out for the summer vacation. And again, traditionally, whilst children are out of school, parents, but again, there were some members who did, and the new standing orders again call on there being no meetings of of Parliament.
Here is a tidbit of information in case it's new to you. You don't get a vacation. You don't get vacation when you're elected. There's nothing there in your job description that says you get 2 weeks vacation. In fact, arguably, the politician could take every day off. He could skive off all day, every day, arguably. It's just a matter of, are you going to hold him or her accountable? Because there's nothing there that stops him or her from getting up and just walking around and fraternizing a bar or two or whatever it is. You technically don't have to work. There's nothing there.
Right.
And all the more reason why it's important for us as members of the public to do what we can via radio, newspapers, the media, whatever, to hold your politicians accountable.
Indeed.
Keep them in check.
Indeed. Other notable changes, of course, there were specific as it relates to the attendance and absence of members. There were some new segments or some new standing orders implemented, one to define broadcasting of Parliament business. There was an entirely new Section 6 or Part 6, which deals with the public business, and that includes things such as the arrangement of public business, the issues for debate, the notice of motions and amendments, the period of notice, exemption from notice, motion general rules, amendments, and motions on national policy issues. Also significant, as we also talked, and specifically a questions for the Premier or Premier question time was added to the standing orders to make it in line more with what happens in the United Kingdom Parliament. That will also be included. Interestingly, there were provisions in 2022 which in standing order, I want to say it was, let's see, page 10 of the previous one.
But the one in question in the Premier, it sounds like it's completely new. That hasn't been happening lately. This is
the Premier
hasn't happened yet.
Have never happened yet. So this will be the first
government,
the first government to do it. 5, which deals with the appointment and composition of cabinet. That has been removed altogether from the 20. So perhaps we were, being redundant by including it in the parliamentary things such as Finance Committee, the Public Accounts Committee, the Standing Orders Committee, the Business Committee. In 2022, there was the Register of Interests Committee as a standing committee. But again, we can only presume that this was removed from the standing orders because the Commission for Standards in Public Life, which I suppose and may have been removed for purposes of redundancy. But those were quite substantial. Again, previously 91 standing orders, and now we have 112 standing orders, an entirely new section as it relates to public business. There were a number of minor amendments to the terminology in various sections to include things like the order paper, personal explanations, statements from members of government. There were some changes as it relates to the rules of debate, specifically as they address the length of speeches and debates, interpretations. There was a new Standing Order 53, which deal with matters of sub judice, which were not included in scope of debate or the term called anticipation. Members are not allowed to anticipate what a member is going to say in specific circumstances. And the new standing orders, again, sought to, I guess, perhaps modernize and add to it. There were provisions made to procedures on private bills, as well as further updates and refinements to both the Standing Committee of Finance Committee and the procedures and appropriations relevant to that Finance Committee, which certainly takes place at least twice a year when we have a presentation of the budget. As members know, the spending, as we've been talking about pretty much all day today, must first be approved by all members of the Legislative Assembly, first by vote. But it is in Finance Committee where there are adjustments or further fine-tuning to what was presented in the budget to take into consideration for member contributions as part of those budget debates. I think that's useful. And again, the new standing order sought to provide further clarification and again bring up to date the standing orders with the more relevant operation of Parliament. Other interesting improvements were made to the select committees of Parliament, those committees, and the publication of reports of those select committees. There's also a Part 15, which was not included in the previous standing orders, and it deals with things such as the employment of members in professional capacity, admission to the press, admission to the public, the suspension of standing orders and when it is permissible for standing orders to be suspended, the general authority of the Speaker, and the meeting of Parliament by electronic means, which again include, of course, the digital media that we now seems to be part of everyday life, wasn't contained in the 2022 standing order. So it was rather extensive, but I think the key highlights were, as we pointed out, the change in the schedule, the change in the days, and of course the fixed recesses during the orders. We do have, as of today, copies of both the new standing orders and the old ones in possession. So we'll add.
You went hunting those down, didn't you?
I did. Well, I'm trying to keep my word.
You're so proud of yourself.
I am proud of myself.
So what about the I want to get more on that sub judice one, and the other one is the issue of, I remember having a lot of discussions in relation to whether you'd be able to have your laptop sitting on your desk in the Parliament, etc.
Oh yes, those are some important rules. Let me start with your first one on sub judice, which is a new clause contained.
Yeah, I don't recall it.
Sub judice matters. Sub judice, standing order 53-1. Subject always to the discretion of the presiding officer and to the right of the House to legislate, a member shall not raise or pursue any matters which relates to active proceedings until the matter is ended by judgment or discontinuance unless the presiding officer is satisfied that A, the matter is clearly related to a matter of general public importance, B, the matter does not relate to a case that is awaiting or under adjudication, and C, the member does not, in his or her comments, create a real or substantial danger of prejudice to the fair determination of a matter, and 2, a member, by alleging that a matter is sub judice, shall be confirming to the House that paragraph 1 is applicable and shall accept responsibility for so advising the House. So, again, any matter that is presently before the courts is generally viewed as off topic or not allowed for discussion.
But there's a few provisions there.
Yeah, there are 3 provisos in which you can get around that. And again, if it's of a matter of clear public importance, if the case is not awaiting adjudication, and if the comments do not create substantial danger to prejudice the outcome of that adjudication, was included. And your second question was related to what?
The technology.
Oh, yes.
There was a talk before about the laptops on your...
Yes, I think this was covered in the rules for members not speaking, Standing Order 57, which is contained on page 55. It says, rules for members not speaking. A member present in the chamber during your debate shall enter and leave with decorum. B, maintain silence while other members are speaking and not interrupt. C, shall bow to the presiding officer at entering and leaving. D, shall not leave the House when the presiding officer is addressing the House. E, shall not pass between the presiding officer and any member who's speaking. F, shall not engage excessively in crosstalk or converse noisily with other members. G, shall avoid running commentaries with other members. H, shall not sit with his back towards the presiding officer. I, shall not use any electronic device in such manner that, in the opinion of the presiding officer, disturbs the proceeding of the House. So you guys, suppose you can use your laptop, but you can't have the volume up and therefore disturb the proceedings. J, shall avoid talking or laughing in the lobby loud enough to be heard in the chamber. This, of course, applies to not only members, but members of the public. K, shall otherwise conduct himself or herself in a fit and proper manner. And L, shall wear business attire. So I think that covers the concerns that were raised by yourself. And if
no mention specifically of cell phones, of course.
It doesn't mention cell phones, but I think it goes on to say, shall not use any electronic device in such a manner that, in the opinion of the presiding officer, which in this case would be the Speaker of the House, disturbs the proceedings of the House. So your phone is not allowed to ring. You can have it, but perhaps it'll be on silent. Likewise, if you have an iPad or a laptop, you can still use it, but it cannot be,
Well, I remember that a lot of people would make complaints. Oh, those politicians, they're on their cell phones. But of course, you have the same constituents texting their politicians.
Indeed.
While they're in Parliament as well.
We have one caller with about 2 minutes remaining. Let's go to the phone lines. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
I don't let on the callers on the chat too much on the song like Bert and Arnie. I don't give people a chance to say what they got to say. How long I've been trying to get in. So if I got 2 minutes, I can't say what I got to say, so do bother.
All right, call back tomorrow then. We'd love to hear from you then. 745-2626 is the number. Again, apologies to that last caller. Can't win them all. We certainly do encourage her to call back, even if it is just to lambaste us for what we didn't do. Ellio, with a minute, 15 seconds remaining.
We didn't take that call, Austin.
Huh?
He said, why we didn't take that call?
She said it did make no sense to call to speak now. We only got 2 minutes left, so I encourage her to call us back tomorrow.
All righty. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a good day. Of course, tomorrow is Friday. I'm actually looking forward to it. Need a little bit of a break, but it's been some good discussion, and I think that we should continue our analysis, if you like, in terms of the manifestos, Mr. Harris. I think that's one of the things that's worthy for us to start again to do tomorrow.
Well, I think I can absolutely accommodate that request, Mr. Solomon.
Great. And I want to highlight that I note that there were sort of some priorities that had been listed by the government, lottery being one of them.
Yes.
And not that I'm against it necessarily, but I didn't see cannabis on there.
No.
I just politically, I just thought that would be important to note.
Yes, I think it's a very good point. Yes, we can include those conversations in the manifesto analysis tomorrow. 4:30 to 6:30 every weekday on Bobo FM.
The home of the BBC World Service, the most trusted news source in the world. This is Bobo 103.1. The following commercial messages are brought to you exclusively by Stingray Media.
At Polar Bear Air Conditioning, we believe in helping you to avoid costly mistakes and replacements.